Quick sound check. Can everybody hear me loud and clear? What's going on, Coach Ray?
Not too much. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. Happy Friday. Let's get a confirmation in the chat before
Happy
we
Sunday.
continue. Oh, it is Sunday. Happy Sunday. We got Coach Hoop saying we sound good. I am says loud and clear here. Are we going long on the NQ on the open or what? It's a good question. It's a good question. That's why we're here to review the markets. And thank you, Andrew, for the confirmation that we sound good as well. Welcome everyone to, I'll turn my audio up a little bit. Welcome everyone to the market kickoff. I am Coach Jay, again, filling in for Nick for a tick. Nick is out growing his family. Sent Nick a message just to see how things are going. But he's going to be out for a little while. So I, took the ball and ran with it and said, you know what, I'll take over the market kickoff. But I brought a friend with me today. You guys know me. I'm Coach Jay. If you don't know me, I've been a Topstep performance coach since June of 2023. Been trading for the past 12 years and in the futures markets for the past 5. And that is Coach Ray. Coach Ray, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, yeah, my name's Coach Ray. Been with Topstep as a performance coach here, coming up on a couple of years, and a funded trader for 4.5+ years. So yeah, excited to kind of get the week off right.
Coach Ray, I don't think the people know exactly who they have in front of him. If you guys have seen Coach Ray in Discord, he does Discord class every day, every Monday through Thursday at
Correct.
6 p.m. Central Time in Discord. Coach Ray has one of the longest tenured live accounts at Topstep.
Yes.
So you are speaking to someone who is speaking through experience with trading, like all of us coaches here. But I always love to share that tidbit when I'm on with Coach Ray.
Yeah.
So, Coach, what did you think of the markets last week?
Well, I mean, the markets. I think the markets were great if you're on the right side of them.
Yeah.
I think Friday was presented some nice opportunities, I would say, in both the equities and the commodity markets. I think with all the earnings that are coming up, I would expect that it would present some additional opportunities as we enter the week. So yeah, I think we're entering a very good time. I think overall, I think the markets have the just amount of volatility that we need to really kind of take advantage of them. So
Okay, awesome. And now what we're doing here, Coach, it is Sunday. Markets are closed at least for the next 10 minutes or so, but just a little bit of a Sunday prep. So if you want to walk, our audience through what your process is, I'll go over a little bit of my process and we'll go from there. But let's look
Yeah.
at the news first. Like Coach did mention, we do have some earnings coming out later this week. Not much as far as red folder news goes. I see we do have a housing starts number, Canadian CPI on Tuesday, the 19th. But the big news of the week is going to be earnings. We have Walmart reporting before the open on Tuesday as well. But I think what everyone cares about, it's not Target, it is NVIDIA's earnings. NVIDIA reporting after the close on Wednesday. We know the last time it was said to be the biggest earnings report of all time. And of all time until right now, because I just saw another headline that said this is now the biggest earnings report of all time. So NVIDIA, just like Apple, just keeps breaking records. So NVIDIA earnings on Wednesday. We may see the tech markets wait a little bit, maybe see some hesitation, consolidation is what I'm expecting before one of the biggest tech earnings. But it seems like there's always big news coming out. Outside of that, of course, we have jobless claims, existing home sales on Thursday, and then on Friday we have a services PMI, manufacturing PMI number. Coach, do you take much of the news into consideration in your trading, or are you mostly a technical trader?
Yeah, I would say that I look at the news mainly as the kind of as a guide.
Okay.
I think I want to be aware of any sort of event that could move the markets, right? So, I mean, things like FOMC, inventory reports for crude oil, those kinds of events. I don't necessarily want to be in the market when they happen.
Right.
I want to know when they're around because they, again, this could potentially present me some opportunities that might be able to take advantage of. So yeah, definitely on a daily basis, I look at the news. I want to know what news events could shake the markets in ways that I may not anticipate, and I want to be aware of those news events and the timing of those news events so I can position myself accordingly.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's get into the charts. Right now, I have the S&P chart up. We're looking at a daily. We are talking about weekly prep. So where are we sitting right now to open up the week? We saw the kind of sell-off that we had after the election rally last week. We consolidated a little bit, and then into Thursday and Friday, we sold off a lot of that election move, not all of it. We can see the range on election week in the S&Ps was down to 57.52 at the low, 59.66 at the high, and we're kind of around 60% of that range right now. But what I see on this chart right here, Coach, we're sitting at the 20-day moving average, which is this yellow
Hmm.
line up here. The markets
Hmm.
are still very much in an uptrend. If you watch certain financial channels, they're going to say, hey, two really big down days, markets in turmoil and things like that. But what this felt like to me was a pretty healthy retracement of a
Yeah.
move. If we look at election day, we didn't get much of a pullback, even on shorter time frames. There wasn't much of an opportunity to sell the market. So it's always good when we get a little bit of a pullback here. So going into this week, what I'm trying to see, even as early as today's session going into tomorrow, do we hold this 20 moving average, or does the market continue to sell off and we get a potential test of the 50-day moving average? We can
Hmm.
see that the 50-day isn't something that we test often. It has been a little while. It's been a month and a half since we've tested the 50-day moving average before that election week. So just curious to see whether or not we get a test of this. Um, what are you seeing on your side in the S&P in the S&Ps, Coach? I'm going to switch over to your charts if you want to go through
Yeah.
it. I know you look at a lot of volume profiles, so uh,
Yeah.
let's see what you have first. I'm
Yeah.
going to switch over to
So,
your charts.
yep. So right now, I'm looking at kind of prior supply and demand levels, and I see this area right here. Okay, this is an interesting area for me because this was once an area that was resisted. Right, we're
Hmm.
coming into this area now, and the idea is what was once resistant will become support. Right, so this
What
level
price is that, Coach?
around it looks like around 5,900 maybe.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit
Okay.
lower. 58.8725, I guess, if you really were to drill down. But I'm more about areas than I am about specific prices. But
Correct.
certainly this area here, again, if I were to draw this little box, this area right here would be kind of a prime area, maybe that we could potentially see a reversal in price. Okay. Now, if that doesn't hold, well, the next level that I see in this market is down below around, let's call it 57.50, right? Maybe 57.75. And let's call it 57.50, right? Somewhere in that range. Okay. That would be the next logical level where I would expect maybe price to potentially reverse away from. So if I was a buyer, I'm always looking at a reference level where I can base my decisions. And when I'm looking at these higher time frames, I'm looking more about kind of supply and demand levels, right? So that's just kind of a fancy way of saying resistance and support, right? Supply is these areas above here, demand are kind of these areas I grew in green. So if I was a buyer in this market, I would be patient, to try to see if I can see maybe if I do get a series of price action to indicate that the price is going to reverse from this area.
Awesome. Coach, so you and I both are, tasked every day to put some levels on the Daily Levels
Yeah, yeah,
webpage, which
yeah,
has been pretty good. We have the Daily Levels indicator on Topstep X. A lot of
yep.
those are based on, volume profile, value areas,
Mhm,
highs and lows, points of
mhm,
control.
mhm.
What does your weekly prep normally look like? Are you, because a lot of times I feel like the levels I come up with on Sunday
Yeah.
are usually pretty good throughout the rest of the week. So
Yeah,
how
yeah.
often are you adjusting those levels, or how much does what you know what you look at now inform the rest of your week?
Yeah, so it's, like, so these levels that I just mentioned, this 58.87 and these 57.50s, well,
Hmm.
that'll be a permanent line on my chart somewhere, right?
Got you.
Because I know that these are kind of daily levels, or, in some cases, I may go up to the weekly level, and I'll identify those levels. But then on a daily basis, starting from the daily and working my way down to the 30 minutes, I kind of establish the levels on a daily basis.
Yep.
So it's just like I think I've maybe expressed this in the past. I look at these levels as kind of like fences, right?
Mm,
Strength of fences. You have chicken wire, or kind of like the 1 minute chart. 30 and 15-minute chart are kind of the wooden fence. And then we get to the daily and the weekly levels, and they become kind of the brick fence, right?
got you.
So so the idea here is these levels are going to present some resistance, they're going to present some sort of bounce. And so I want to make sure that I'm aware of those levels. I'm alerted to those levels when they become close to them.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, coach. So we got a
Sure.
58.87, we'll call it 5900, and then below that
Yeah,
we got a
5,900, and I would say maybe
57.35.
57.50, maybe as low as 57.35 is kind of the level that I would be looking at on the daily.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for that, coach. And again, anything we say here is for educational purposes only, not considered any trading or investment advice. And we haven't even, given out any signals or anything like that yet. Just areas of opportunity that we think the market has the potential to trade to. And that's how we look at levels. I love what you said, coach, about not defining a specific price for the market to trade to. We may catch one every once in a while, but that's not ultimately the goal, right? It's
Yeah.
where do I think the market has a general potential to trade to, and then I frame my trades around that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we don't trade with a scalpel, we trade with a butcher knife, right?
Right, right. Yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point. Let's look at the Nasdaq. Do you trade the Nasdaq often, Coach?
On occasion, I'm very particular on the areas that I trade NASDAQ just because of its natural volatility here. I'm gonna go ahead and remove some of these. These are some of these levels I capture. But you can see here that we've actually, unlike the ES, we've actually crossed a level that I would have expected that maybe we've gotten a bounce off of. And the level I'm talking about here
Yep.
is this area right here, right? I would have expected price to maybe stall here. The fact that we were able to pierce right through it, okay, is kind of a bit telling, right? That there is a fair amount of strength in this move to the downside, okay? So the next level that I see is down below here, and I would say I would probably call, let's see, maybe around this area here, maybe 20,235 ish,
Yep.
somewhere in that range. That would be an area where I would expect, again, where when I'm looking for an area for buyers, well, I look to the left, right? I
Hmm.
look to the left and I say, okay, where have buyers presented or seen shown strength? Well, they showed some strength here because they were able to take price away from an area of consolidation. So again, if price were to come back down to this area, right, then I would be interested to see how price reacts. And if I get on a lower time frame, some indication that it is going to be supportive, maybe a 3 bar reversal, what have you, then I take notice of that. So this is kind of, I would say, kind of the natural inclination that I have. Now, if we do break below this area, if we do break below, say, 20,060, then I'm looking at the left again and seeing where price can go, right? What's the next consolidation area I can find? And
Right.
that's kind of how I arrive at my levels.
Awesome. Those levels that you're looking at, Coach, I'm going to pull up my charts one more time. Uh, and we talked about the S&Ps and the potential to test that 50-day moving average. If we look at the Nasdaq looks a little weaker, right? Like you said, Coach, we retraced a lot of this move already, and
Hmm.
it kind of sold through the area where you were potentially looking for a bounce. The yellow
Yep.
line here is that 20 moving average again. We closed significantly under that, and as close to the 50-day moving average as we are to the 20 right now. That 50-day moving average is right around 20,300. So right in that zone that you were kind of talking about. And just the potential for a bounce. Again, I don't think that this sell-off that we're seeing is a complete, change of market structure. And is this a sell-off going into the end of the year? I think it's just, again, a healthy pullback. And I'm looking at two areas here. So the 50-day moving average, which is at 300, we'll call it. And then the
Yep.
red line that I have on my chart here, which is the monthly VWAP.
Yep.
Friday was the day that we sold off through it. So a potential retracement and test of that monthly VWAP to the other side now to see if it's at all a resistance is up at 20,788.
Hmm.
So I'm going to frame out Friday's range. We did have a pretty big range, and a lot of times when we see these, 2% days in the NASDAQ, we get at least some type of retracement move. So I wouldn't be surprised at a retracement back up to at least 50% of this area here, 20,690, 20,700, we'll call it. But very interesting place. And the markets are now open. And I see some questions. One more of a statement. Bro, it's 1 a.m. here. Why are we trading Asian session? Well, right now we're not trading. We're kind of just prepping prepping for the week. If a really good opportunity presents itself, I will take it. But more so just prepping for the week, identifying levels, and going from there. And then Brud Sushi says, this is my first time in the market kickoff. Welcome. Do you guys recommend taking trades Sunday or is it low volume? It is going to be normally a lower volume session. But what about you, Coach? What do you say to that? Do you recommend taking trades during this time or more of a prep?
Yeah, I would say it was probably more of a prep. I mean, there are markets that you might be able to entertain during this period of time. I wouldn't say that equities would be one of them necessarily.
Yeah.
I think there's probably other markets you could be taking a look at during this timeline. Maybe that trade 24 hours, maybe the gold, and maybe the crude oil. They trade a little bit better. There's also the Nikkei, I guess. There's another market that you might move a little bit better, especially during Asia.
Yep. So let's go over to gold then, Coach. I did see some headlines about escalations in the Middle East. So I was interested about what the potential for crude oil on this open, but also I don't want to trade the headlines in crude oil because sometimes what happens in the markets and what's happening in the world don't necessarily correlate. Where I think we've seen in the past, I think it was about 2 weeks ago, where they said there were attacks on Iran, and you
Right.
would think that crude oil is shooting to the upside. But then the
Yeah.
headline came out and said, well, those attacks didn't hit any of the oil reserves. So then we get the exact opposite move. So,
Right.
like we said, paying attention to headlines, knowing what's out there, but then trading what's on the charts. Uh,
Correct.
I'm gonna switch it over to your charts, Coach. If you want to
Yep.
look at, you have gold up here.
Okay.
Tell us what you're seeing in gold,
Yeah.
because I'm seeing the
So
same thing.
again, similarly, it's coming into an area that I would expect maybe some buyers to be present, right? We had this nice consolidation area that's been established back in August, right? We had price, we had price leave this area, right? And it kind of rallied from it. Now we've come back to this area probably for the first time since it left back in September, right? So the
Yep.
idea here is it's at a place where you would expect at least a little bit of bounce, right? So again, I kind of like using my anchor VWAP as well, especially when there's a little bit of a pivot, right? So I'm drawing in my anchor VWAP, and the idea is that I would
Where'd you
expect
anchor that to,
price.
Coach?
Yeah, this is I draw my anchor VWAP anytime I see any sort of change.
Okay,
So I anchor my VWAP at the top of I guess on the 31st here.
got you.
So I would expect that if we do get a rally, that we could potentially get all the way up to this anchor VWAP before we see maybe continuation move to the downside. Because I do see that we at I guess a reasonable level support here, right? And it would not be unrealistic for me to think that price could rally up to this anchor VWAP, right? That's kind of more like maybe a little bit of a mean reversion kind of trade, right?
Yeah, very nice.
So yeah, so I think right now I would say if I were to entertain anything, I would say that I would probably be looking for maybe a long trade in gold, given where it's at, with the target of something that maybe can come back up to anchor VWAP, right? And
Yeah.
that would be kind of the extent of my trade before I would start to think of that maybe we might see a continuation move to the downside once we got up to anchor VWAP.
Nice. I'm seeing something very similar myself here, Coach. We have, like you said, we haven't revisited this price since September. We kind of sold off through it, the low 25.39, and I just framed out this daily candle from September 12th. We tested the lows on Thursday of last week. and kind of consolidated in this price right now. So I'm seeing something very similar. For me to take a trade, I'd probably have to go down to a 30-minute chart and see what the potential is. I do like longs as well, but then looking at the 30-minute chart, I'm looking at this 200 moving average, which is this white line coming down here, and that is sitting at 25.90. So if I do like the long on the higher time frame, and then this is where we go, we're day trading most of the time. Well, not most of the time. All of us are day trading at Topstep. So it's identifying the level, and then okay, what is the day presenting? If I was to get long in this, this white line, this 200 moving average 25.90 would have to be the conservative price target for me. And then I would go to that higher time frame target, like you said, and I think it's exact same for me, 2670s around there.
Yeah, definitely looks good. And it looks like, I don't know, based on this chart, looks like we got a gap open higher,
Yes, we
right?
did. We did. Yep.
So
So
that's an indication that there's a fair amount of interest to take this market to the upside. So yeah, I'm very much aligned with your view here on GC long.
it's looking good. I normally don't like to take a trade out. If I'm going to trade the overnight session, you guys, if you join at the buzzer, you know exactly what I'm going to say. I like to let the first half an hour establish and then, identify a trade from there. Do we just continue to run from here and I don't get in a trade? I'm okay with that. But, the first 7 minutes, and then, there was the question, is this a lower volume time? It is. So I'm going to allow a little bit of a market, allow some information to develop before I jump in a trade, especially because the markets are probably a little less liquid than they're going to be in a couple of hours. And I saw we had some news out in Japan as well. Japan core machinery orders. So it looks like Japan factory information in the next half an hour, which may give us some volatility as well, or potentially in Dakota's slow market session.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Anything else you're seeing in gold, Coach?
Yeah, I'm right now. I'm just kind of establishing kind of my initial balance range.
Mhm.
Okay, so I have kind of put the highs and the lows here, and the idea is if I get a break of this initial balance range I have highlighted here in yellow in the direction of my trade, then that offers me a reference level that I can use as a basis for my stops. Right.
Nice.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at right now. But yeah, that's really only I'm like you, Coach Shea. I'm not really anxious to kind of rush into the market.
Yeah.
Uh, I'd like to let the market kind of define itself here a little bit, and once it's been established, then participate. But yeah, so far looking promising on the long side.
Agreed. Yeah, I see some people in the chat saying, "Oh, the Nasdaq is running 60 points," and it is, right? Oops, I didn't mean to type that in the chat, but it is, right? If you look at a shorter time frame, we got the first uh, 3 minute. I'm looking at a 3 minute opening range now. This is a clear long setup, but I'll be honest, right? And we all have to find where we fit in trading. Sunday nights are usually not when I'm in execution mode. It's planning mode. Even if something really great sets up, if I'm not watching Nick Fortick on the market kickoff, I'm planning out the week and not really in execution mode. And I think we all need to know where that is for ourselves. So let's look at crude oil, which has been a very interesting market. Coach, do you trade crude?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of
Okay.
my top markets. I like
All
trading.
right.
I would say if I had to pick an order, it would be crude oil, gold, and then equities. That's kind of
Very nice.
I,
So why
I
don't
like to
we
look
throw
at.
this one to you then, and you can
Okay.
start with
All right.
your crude oil analysis, and we'll go.
All right.
I'll pick back off of you.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. So I have a lot of blue here, so I'm trying to figure out what that's coming from. All right. Okay. So it's kind of counterintuitive, to be honest, with all the unrest that we have in the Middle East. That you would expect that oil would be in the roof, going through the roof, right?
Right.
On the contrary, we've been kind of in this kind of downward spiral, in crude oil. We continue to make lower lows, lower highs, right? And we continue to do so. Even to now, we technically we've opened below this kind of area that I've kind of drawn here, right? This area right here is an area where I would have expected again another bounce,
And what
right?
price are those?
And
It's 66.60.
yeah, 66.60. Yeah.
Okay.
And we've opened below it. So if we remain in this level, then I certainly don't see us avoiding 64. Right?
Yeah.
I don't. It's pretty clear sailing down to 64. Before we could potentially see any sort of reversal in this market. Right. So right now, if I was kind of heading into the week, I would say that you have to kind of look at this market from a bearish point of view, and you want to figure out an area where you could participate in this market to the bearish side. And again, I'm kind of inclined to always use this is my 233-day EMA that I have here up on the top.
Okay.
I get a lot of questions about this. Why 233? It kind of
Yeah.
reminds me of the movie Spinal Tap, right?
I don't think
uh,
I've ever seen it.
Spinal Tap is as well. It was a movie about a rock band,
Okay.
and I guess their amp went to 11. And so they were presented the question, well, why does your amp go to 11? And his response was, it's one louder.
There you go.
That's the extent of his explanation. So,
Simple.
but in any
Right.
case, yeah, the 233 again is a Fibonacci number, right? Two, in my back testing, I've seen that price often reacts away from it, right? This was kind of a classic example of how oil price reverses away from it. So it's one of these levels that I keep on my higher time frame chart. It's kind of helps me arrive at maybe general sentiment of the market.
Okay.
Uh, and so again, it offers me some opportunities, or at least indications of opportunities in the direction. So, but yeah, I would say right now that we need to think bearish, okay, in this market. I would say that the earliest that we would even consider maybe a long would probably be around 65, maybe 64-ish, right, before we consider any sort of long movement. But I really don't want to be the first one to try to take this market back up,
Agreed.
right? I want to see some indication that the buyers can at least hold a 30-minute bar bullish, right?
Yeah.
Before I'm willing to, especially given this chart. I mean, this price, this formations here are not giving me any indication that I should be aggressively bullish, right?
Got you.
So,
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, Coach. I'll pull over my charts here. We have and you talked about the 64 level. The yearly low in crude oil is 63.22,
mm,
and it looks like that's where we're heading, right? That's a
yep,
little less than a 5% move, and if we know crude oil, that could happen in a day if it wanted to. It could happen in 2 days.
yeah,
And I agree with you. This does look very heavy. Crude has been in doing this kind of range from what I've seen between
yep,
65s and 80s, and it bounces back
correct.
and forth. That range consolidated a little bit, and it seems like in the last month we've been between 67 and 72. But we got some closes below this $67 level. Is it is it rollover week for crude oil?
Honestly, I don't know.
S I need to check on that because I know it's supposed to roll soon. I
Okay.
don't know if it's this week, so let me check on that. Do you do
Yeah,
you
I
do
mean,
you
I often go to bar chart and make sure that I have the correct instrument and contract for
Yep.
the volume, right? So
Okay, there we go. Andrew, thank you. It rolled. It rolled last week. Okay, so
roll less.
we should be all set on
Yeah,
the.
we're looking at the F contract at this point.
Yep, we're looking at F. Okay, awesome.
Yeah,
Perfect. So yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. Again, how do I get short this market? If I go
yeah,
down to a 30-minute chart, and again, we look at this 200 moving average, which is this white line here, pretty close to that 233. Uh, but we can see it being a resistance. We're kind of extended from it now, so I wouldn't be
yeah,
surprised at least a bit of a retracement to the 20 moving average, which is at 67.44 currently. Um,
yeah,
but as this 20 starts to get closer to price, I think I'd use that maybe a short somewhere near 67s. But yeah, crude is not a market that I'm, again, like you said, Coach. I'm not looking to buy this first because I
no,
can be wrong a bunch of times doing that. And we are at some higher time frame demand levels where a buyer
yeah,
could step in here. But
yeah,
if they do step in, and the reason I don't want to be the first, and you don't either, if they do step in, there's a ton of room to the upside.
yeah, absolutely. You're gonna
So
have plenty of chance. You're gonna have plenty of chance to participate in this market. You just need to
exactly,
be patient, right?
exactly.
There's plenty of runway to the upside. Yeah, we don't need to be the first ones, right? We don't want to get cut up. let the participants with the big cachets, you know, come into the market.
Exactly, exactly. My trading mentor used to say all the time, he's like, tops and bottoms of the market are not meant for us because we don't get to create them.
Right.
If I want to buy crude oil here, I'm not trading an account big enough to say that this is going to be the bottom.
Correct.
So my job is to take the 60% in the middle, and you can do very well doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So we went over the equities, we went over gold, we went over crude oil. I'm going to bring up a micro Bitcoin chart, Coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost hard to ignore Bitcoin at this point. Um, have you traded it at all? Have you traded micro
No, I
Bitcoin?
haven't actually. It's gonna be interesting for me.
Yeah, so this is a market, a pretty good market to trade, honestly. The tick value in micro Bitcoin, I'll just put a one lot on here, 50 cents a tick in micro Bitcoin. So it's been
Oh, wow.
I think it's a really good market for Topstep accounts to trade because of the
Mhm.
risk management, kind of built into a 50 cent a tick market. But
Yep.
it's also one that's just been going up. If we look at a daily chart, we started that breakout last week after the election. Um, some favorable news for the crypto markets and kind of rocketed up to the upside, but potentially slowing down. Now, the one thing about trading micro Bitcoin is because Bitcoin is a 24/7 market, it is always going to have these gaps going into Sunday. So if I'm looking at the futures contract, we have a gap from 91, we'll call it 92,000 down to where we opened at 90,255.
Mm.
But this is a market like crude. I'm not looking to sell this. It feels like this is a rally up to 100,000, and trying to identify a place to buy it. I'm looking at this 200 moving average, which is down at 89,215. We can see that being a support. This is a 30-minute chart. We can see that being a support on the way up. And when we get above it, the market likes to rally. But if I'm looking at these moving averages, over the past couple of days, we are kind of wrapping around each other, getting a little bit consolidated. But looking for a place to get long this market. I like the risk management that it presents again for Topstep accounts, where I could risk, somewhere well below this 200 moving average, and I just randomly clicked buy on this market. This is not where I would enter, and even still, I'd be risking $300 on a one lot here for potential back at least to the gap fill, somewhere close to 1 to 1. So a market that I'm going to pay attention to for the week. We have, Coach Paul and I on At the Buzzer, we go over the top percentage movers of the day, and micro Bitcoin over the last week, out of 5 days, was the top percentage mover 3 out of the 5 days. Um, so present some opportunity. Uh, this gap is always kind of weird to look at, but you could always just look at the spot Bitcoin price and see that we pulled off from the highs a little bit.
Mhm.
But I see a rally the rest of the week. Maybe this is the week Bitcoin hits 100,000. I don't know. I don't want to predict, but the rally does look very strong for now.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that statement. I mean, based on I've never looked at Bitcoin much, but given what I'm seeing, the sloping price charts, I would say that this is probably kind of opposite of what we were saying with crude oil, right? It's kind of a
Yeah,
market where we need to think about where we can reasonably buy, right?
yeah.
So waiting for a level where we can buy it in a reasonable way is kind of the plan forward, I would say.
Coach, I want to ask you a question. Do you, when you're trading a market, let's say you're trading crude oil, uh,
Hmm.
do you define your day before you go into it and say, "Hey, I only want to sell this market and take only sell trades"? Do you ever flip bias and trade both? I sometimes will trade both. I work with Coach Paul a lot, and he says, if he's looking to sell the market for the day, he's only placing sell side orders and never buying. What about how does
Yeah,
that work for you?
I would say that I would say that I let the higher time frame drive my view, but I'm not
Okay,
married to it. So I come
gotcha.
into the market with a view on the higher time frame, but if I find a good level on a
Hmm.
lower time frame chart, even if it's slightly against maybe the higher time frame trend, I may qualify that trade a little bit and saying, you know what, maybe this is a mean reversion trade back up to say VWAP or something
Gotcha.
along those lines. And if I'm working against the trend, where if I am if I'm aligned with a higher time frame, then I would use the VWAP as a location for a continuation trade. So I'm not 100% against trading the opposite end, but I do keep track of what the higher time frame's saying. And oftentimes I have a split screen where I have a 4 hour on one side and my 15-minute on the other.
Right.
Where I always want to keep it. I always want to keep it as much as I can aligned with the higher time frame move.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it makes life a lot easier when you can get on the right side of the trend.
Yeah, yeah,
We saw
yeah,
last week Dakota was trading on fast markets in the NASDAQ on the day where it literally did nothing but sell off on a higher time frame chart. And Dakota, he self-proclaimed perma bull, uh,
yeah,
found a way to make money buying it. But he's obviously one of the
yeah,
best traders that we have here, and it's a very difficult thing to do, right? If you can identify the
yeah,
trend by looking at the higher time frame, may make your life a little bit easier. And it's not just to say you can blindly sell because the market is selling off. You still need trade location is still important, but it's a difficult thing to do to be counter trend.
yeah. And I would just say that you need to make sure that you set reasonable expectations of the move, right?
Yes.
I think if you're
Yep.
going counter trend and you're maybe a little bit extended to one side, then maybe something back to the mean, in this case, a VWAP would be a reasonable target for your trade, right? Rather than thinking that the market is going to completely reverse its entire move.
Right.
That doesn't seem always to be the case.
It's like, oh, it dropped too far. It has to go up from here. It's like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
doesn't have to do anything. I should have
No.
took this micro Bitcoin trade in my XFAs. It's looking decent.
Yeah.
It's up a couple ticks already. I think what do we have, a 2 tick drawdown, which is $1. Um,
Yeah.
really like this market. So traders, if you haven't traded it, I will look at pretty much any market and trade it as long as it's presenting a decent opportunity and the tick value fits in my account. For example, the Nikkei, I'm not going to trade the Nikkei on a 50K Topstep account because it's $25 a tick, right? It's a little bit too expensive for that risk, but 50 cents a tick, you can trade that in pretty much any of the accounts. We got a
Gold
question.
gold seems to be creating a little bit of a 3-bar reversal pattern I'm seeing on a daily, obviously
Oh yeah, it
daily, but I
is.
mean, looking at a smaller time frame, obviously going to look a lot nicer. I think if we can get above this, I guess, consolidation area, which we're already challenging. I don't know if you guys can see my charts, but
Yep, just pulled it up.
okay, yeah. So we're kind of breaking above this consolidation area, beginning to anyway. If we do
20,
manage to close,
2578, 2580, we'll call it.
yeah, yeah, somewhere in that range, then yeah, I mean, we could have a fair opportunity to the upside, maybe come back to some of these levels that we had left before, right? So
Yeah, this
I
starts.
do see the 233-day EMA, which is always a concern for me.
Mm.
That this is kind of could put a wrench in the works here a little bit, but and then I have this. I can't remember what this is, but let me see if I can. This is the 9 simple moving average. Is that right? In any case, the idea I'm starting to see some price action that would indicate that we could see some higher prices in this market.
Yeah, this looks strong. I think we were both looking at this like, hey, okay, where do we buy this? Is the market that's been selling off, came down to a higher time frame demand area. Looking at this daily chart, I guess it would be a confirmed 3-bar reversal on the daily above 86,
Hmm.
we'll call it.
Yep.
But yeah, this looks really strong. So what I would do, kind of just going into, okay, how do we execute on the information that we're saying here? Uh, Again, I'm looking at this first 30 minutes and we have 5 minutes before it closes. And I am going to look for what Coach uh, Paul and I have been calling the urgency trade, right? So we identify the first 30 minutes. We look at VWAP attached to that first 30 minutes and looking for VWAP and price to leave the range urgently. And, why do we say urgently? I'll try to find an example. I think this will be one right here where after that first half an hour is printed, the angle of VWAP is pretty steep and price is leaving right now. This gives us an opportunity to sell with the trend, right? Identify the flow, get in with the flow of the market. So I'm just looking to see if that presents itself in gold. And then I take this as a buy. Again, we go back to the 200 moving average, which on the 30 minute is at 25.90. So if I do buy this, it's about 14 points before an area of potential contention. And then
Yep.
2,600, obviously, whole number. Got to look at the market's response to that as well. But I see a potential in gold up to 2620, right? That's about 1.5% to the upside on the day, which isn't a huge day in gold at all. Um, but again, this is just a hypothesis, and now we have to read what the market is saying.
Yep.
All right, let's see if we got any questions. If you guys do have any questions, let us know. Put them in the chat. I think you might have lost my screens. Put them back over there.
Yes.
There we go. I really like a short under 20,350. What's your thoughts? This is from Dude Working, 20,350. You're talking about the NASDAQ. Did you mean to say 350 or 530? Because 350,
Just
I'd
below.
love I'd love a short to 350. That'd be
Yeah.
an amazing trade.
Yeah.
But shorts under 530, and again, anything we say here is for educational purposes only. I could see what you're saying here, where we kind of have, depending on the time frame that you're looking on this might look like a flag here, where we have this consolidation, and the lows of that consolidation is 20,530. I see the potential there. What I would say is, depending on how and when the market trades there, manage your risk. If that's a trade that you see, if it fits your playbook, go ahead and take it.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I like to see is kind of a price event to align with my trade, right?
Yeah.
So if we're thinking short, and I'm looking at a 2-minute chart, and I'm drawing the people call me Picasso for, I guess, for a variety of reasons, but I like drawing my little channel, right? And I'm waiting for a price event to close below the channel to align with my view of what my trade is, right? So if I'm going to go short, then I want to see price below this 233-day EMA, and I want to see a break of the channel. And once I get a break of the channel, I feel like I have a reference level that I use to support my stop, this 233-day EMA, and then I also have structure to support my trade, right? Price action to support my trade. So until I get that, I don't necessarily want to pick the top, right,
Mm,
of the market to sell it off. I
yep.
want to let price dictate to me when it's time.
Makes a
Right
lot of
now,
sense.
I'm not seeing the price action to indicate short, but I mean, if that's aligned with your like Coach Jay said, if that's aligned with your process or an edge in the market, and you've seen this, you've been down this path before, go for it, right? But it's not something that me personally, would do.
Yeah, same here. Again, looking at the NASDAQ, and we have that first half an hour getting ready to close here. I'm looking for, and I'm fully aware that the market does not care about my opinion, and it's going to do what it needs to do. Uh,
Yep.
but I'd be looking for a potential retracement of some of this move from Friday, uh,
Hmm.
if not a full, 50% retracement, somewhere close to it, which would put us up around 20,700 now. The market
Yep.
does not have to do that, but I would not be surprised at it either. And then, of course, if I have a target of 20,700, I want to conservatively think about where the market can trade to. I'm looking at this 30-minute chart and the 20 moving average here, which is at 20,570, which is the first potential area of resistance, and then continuing to go from there. And where's Nick? Nick is going to be out for a couple of weeks. Just message him. He said everything's going great. So Coach Ray and I are here for now. And Coach, thank you for joining. Thoughts
Yeah,
on
no problem.
the bonds dailies. Coach, do you trade any of the treasury products, the notes,
I do not.
bonds, anything like that?
I
Nothing
do
like
not.
that. I don't
No.
either. I usually take those questions and throw them to Coach Paul. I can look at it from a technical perspective, right? On a daily, these are markets that are in very heavy downtrends over the past 2 months. But we are coming down to some potential demand on the daily here. I'm looking at the 30-year and around 115, the potential to bounce around here. But the bonds are not something that I trade very often, so I'm not going to give too much of an opinion on it. I know they are in a, again, very heavy downtrend. If we can look at the 30-minute chart and the 200 moving average, when the 20 and the 50 are, securely below the 200, we can see it acting as a resistance. Did it 3 times last week. So this is a market I'd be looking at the potential to get in short on a medium time frame. But then coach just said, right, you have to set expectations for the outcomes of your trades. If we're coming down to this higher time frame demand on the daily, how much room is there before a potential bounce? And that's
Right.
how I'm going to manage my trade as we see it.
Right. Right. So as DA33 was talking about this 580 level in the NQ, I'm very much aligned with that view as well. I think that 580 level could be an area where if it's going to roll over, that would be the area, at least short term.
Okay.
Okay.
What are you seeing there, coach?
I guess on the 15-minute chart, I see this bearish engulfing candle,
Mm,
right? And that was kind of the last leg of our down move, right? So if this market is indeed going to roll over, if it's going to roll over, this would be a likely area for that to happen. Okay. Otherwise, I'm with you on this kind of 50% retracements and others, that could potentially play out.
got you. Awesome. Let's see if you guys have any questions. Let us know. I think I see another question in the chat. Nick and his wife did have the baby, so they are doing great. Just got a confirmation from Nick. He says hello everyone, and he's busy being a dad right now.
Yeah.
But they are doing well. How do you guys trade multiple accounts? Do you focus on one at a time or different methods? Coach, you've had that
Yeah.
live account for 4 years. How do you trade multiple accounts if you do at all?
Yeah. I'm working on maybe a couple of accounts. I have my funded account, which I'm very particular about the trades I take in that account. And then I have various XFA or combine accounts that I'm kind of working to kind of serve as kind of maybe working on different approaches. But I would say that I don't trade more than maybe a couple accounts at any one time. I find it, sometimes it's a little bit difficult, and I really don't have the screen real estate nor the horsepower on the computer to kind of manage all these things, right?
Yeah,
So I would say that 1 to 2 markets. I'm not a copy trade aficionado by
that
any
was my
stretch of
next
the
question.
imagination. So my focus is on a couple of accounts. One, my funded; two, whatever combine or XFA account I'm trying to grow, and that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think if I'm going to trade multiple accounts, it's likely a copy trade. I do trade my own personal futures account as well as Topstep accounts, but I try to completely separate the two. Where if I'm focused on an XFA with Topstep, I'm not even thinking about my personal account. Right, where
Right.
in that personal account, I probably like to swing trade more than anything. So I kind of look at the Topstep accounts as my day trade account, and then my personal account as find a position, see if you can hold on to something. If there's a good day trade, take it, but try to give each account its own role, if you
Right.
will. Got a question here from Segi. Coach, I trade very good during combines, but each first day of the XFA, the market always has price action like it did on Friday, 2% trend days, and I end up in drawdown. Am I making excuses? Need help. Uh, Segi, you put it out there. I would say that sounds like a potential excuse. Um,
Mhm.
if and what I will say is, if you've realized that every first day of your XFA, if you've realized this as a pattern, try to find where the 2% is going to be and trade in that
Yeah.
direction. Um,
Right.
but I think what's really happening here is the trading real money is getting to you, right? Where the opportunity to make money in that XFA, right? We put a lot of pressure on ourselves, like, oh man, this is the real thing, that's why
Mhm.
I think it's important to practice in the combine the same way you're going to trade in the XFA,
Yeah.
so nothing changes, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we see people say, oh, I passed the combine in 2 days, but when I get to the XFA, I can't hold on to it. It's the
Yeah.
trading that you're doing in that combine in order to pass is not a sustainable type of trading, right? Where it's going to work for a short period of time, but
Mhm.
over the long haul, you're probably going to blow up doing that, right? And it's
Yeah.
it's an emotional style of trading, right? You sometimes we see people throwing on 15 contracts and trying to make $4,500 in 15 seconds.
Right.
That's stressful for anyone,
Yeah.
unless $4,500 is half a percentage of your account, right? And even then,
Right.
in 15 seconds, that's a lot. So, trade in the combine the way you're going to have to trade in the XFAs when you start. And I think that's why the scaling rule is there. Um, where, you know, you can trade 15 contracts in a combine, but when you get to the XFA, you can only trade 3 contracts max minis. Um, Trade that way to pass the combine, so you're already conditioned to trade that way when you get in your XFA. And then the one thing I'll say is, you know, if you're blowing the account on the first day, regardless of the price action, regardless of how many contract sizes you can trade, how many contracts you can trade, uh, set a loss limit. Set a loss limit.
Yeah.
Coach Paul said something on at the buzzer the other day, a couple weeks ago. He says, you know, we can have rules for ourselves, and you know sometimes rules get broken, but principles can't get broken, right? So your loss limit on your account should be a principle. I don't care what happens. I could be in a 15 lot trade, right, where I'm up $6,000 on the day, and I just want to keep pushing it. If I have a daily loss limit set for $500, regardless of what happens, I'm not going to lose more than that $500, right? And
Right.
that's account preservation, right? No
Yeah.
business owner is going to say, hey, you know what? If I don't sell cupcakes today, we're shutting down the bakery,
Mhm.
right? You want to give yourself, you know, a couple more opportunities than, you know, a couple of days, 1 or 2 days in that XFA. What would you say to that, coach?
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple of things. I mean, if you recognize that you're having trouble getting into an XFA account, I'm 100% aligned with what Coach Jay is saying. You're probably trading with emotion or trading dollars instead of your process. If you do recognize that in yourself, you know, maybe create some process-driven kind of goals for yourself, right? And it why is it, there's no reason that you have to start off fast, right?
Right.
As you make that transition from a combine account to an XP account, there's no shame in trading micros for maybe the first couple of weeks as you kind of align yourself and adjust your mind to trading real money, right? I think the mistake that a lot of people make is that you know, the kind of get rich quick kind of mentality that we have, and that results in us trading away the processes that led us, right? I know there's kind of a baseball analogy I will share here, right? Um, go into the majors with what brought you to the show.
Mm,
If you're a singles and doubles hitter going into the majors, why are you coming into the majors trying to hit a home run every time,
right.
right? Go in to the majors with the skill set that brought you there, right? You're not going to reinvent yourself, you know, just because you're in majors. Oh well, now there's singles and doubles aren't. There's a reason that they called you up to the majors, right? Your consistency in hitting singles and doubles, right? So stick with your game plan. Stick with what worked in the combines, and don't stray, and have the discipline and not stray away from it. The other thing is I would eliminate dollars as a kind of a factor of money, right? I would say that you would probably want to start off with some micros, maybe some having some goals for yourself and just being able to navigate the markets in that kind of environment, you know, and then graduate to a mini, or graduate to 2 minis, or graduate to 3 minis. But let that be process driven, right? Let that be, you know, something that you've achieved. Oh, I was able to execute my A setup in the last 10 trades. Okay, now you're eligible to add another micro or trade a mini, whatever the case may be. If you see that in yourself already, every time you move from combine to XFA, that's already an indication for me that you're probably trading too much on the emotional side,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. I would definitely agree with that, coach. Just scanning some charts real quick, and I see some other questions that we're definitely going to get to. Scanning the markets, we do have this first half an hour, and my daily prep normally goes this way. Looking at this first half an hour, again, attaching VWAP and seeing if any of these markets are presenting that urgency trade. So you guys will see me kind of just quick flip through these markets and see if there's anything, right? I'm looking at copper here. Here's the first half an hour. VWAP's a flat line. Not much for me to do right here. You know, it may present a level to level trade, but for an urgency trade for this session, not there. Same thing. We'll go to the NASDAQ, 30-minute opening range, VWAP's flat, not seeing a trade here either. And to me, this is a pretty quick process to try to identify something. If you've seen on At the Buzzer where Coach Paul and I were talked about these after the fact, a lot of the times if we see that urgency, that ends up being the trend for the rest of the day. Now, does it work 100% of the time? I wish it did, but nothing does. But seeing if markets are presenting opportunities early and then going from there. And Seki says, I didn't blow the account, just a little $600 that I will dig out of. Okay, awesome. So that's even better, right? You didn't blow the account. You had a drawdown day, and hopefully $600 is that drawdown that you defined for yourself. So that's good to hear, Seki. And then don't worry about that drawdown, right? It's a day that's going to happen. You don't have to make that money back today. You don't have to make it back this week. You just have to trade good
No.
setups, and then the results are going to follow that. So good stuff.
Right.
How long did you guys struggle with discipline in the beginning?
Oh,
I don't know. I'm gonna be honest here. Discipline, I don't think is a destination. I don't think you get disciplined and then you just stay there. I think it's an ongoing thing. It's an everyday thing. Go ahead, coach.
yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I mean, yeah, I would agree that discipline is not something that just comes to you overnight. I think as you have experience and then as you I have success, and I think more importantly, as you have a process, right? As you define a process for yourself on how you want to engage in the market, the process alone will give you the discipline, right? Because you have a game plan, right? It's when we don't have a game plan that we become undisciplined, right? It's kind of like, I get a lot. I work with traders outside, right? And they come to me and say, okay, well, I really have a trouble with my consistency. Well, tell me about some of your trades. Well, I can't. It's a feel thing. Well, how can you become consistent in trading if you don't have a
Off
plan?
of feel,
Off
especially
a
off of
feel,
feel. Feel changes all the
right?
time. You might wake up
It
and have a
changes all
great
the
day.
time. Yeah. And what do you do when something goes wrong? What do you do when you get in a funk? Right?
Right.
You have to have something. It doesn't have to be a checklist of 20 items, but you have to have at least a skeleton of some of the setups that have worked for you, right? Because if things don't work, then you need to be able to go back to your user manual, right? And figure out what worked for you in the past so that you can align yourself again. So I think discipline comes with having a plan. And then
Yeah.
once you have a plan, I think in some ways discipline, I mean, if you say, okay, well, I have a plan, it's documented edge in the market. Now it's just a matter of me, sticking to my plan. I think the discipline comes with that.
Yeah. I would definitely agree with what you just said there, coach. Rob 161, how do you get out of your way when you've been in a combine for over 40 days and still not near passing? This is my first combine. I haven't blown any. Rob, I don't think you're in your way at all,
No.
honestly. Don't put a time limit on it. Don't put a
Mhm.
time. You're going to see people pass in 2 days. You're going to see people pass in a week. If this is your first one and you haven't blown it, you are right where you're supposed to be. Now,
Yeah.
maybe you could share some of your performance stats and we can look at it and say, hey, maybe this is an opportunity for you to start making progress. But 40 days is not a long time. I had a trader in the VIP group who was in the same VIP account for 6 months,
Yeah.
didn't reset at all. And
Right.
uh, w- it might take you longer than it takes everyone else. But what the experience that you're getting in that time is way more valuable than passing the combine in 2 days. Um, because if you're thinking about trading as a potential career or something that you do for a long period of time, you're going to
Right.
have to be okay with 40 days of not making any money sometimes.
Yeah.
It might happen that way. We don't get to choose that. So I think as long as you're continuing to make progress, if you're learning something every day, if you have some winning days, you have some measured losing days, you're right where you're supposed to be. You don't need to step out of your way unless you think that there's a block that you have, but you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. I would add to that. I would just say, hey, we just need to have a growth mindset, right? Take
Right.
every day that you trade as an opportunity to learn something new, right? If you don't have a process, right, to trade, then work on establishing a process for yourself. If you
Hmm.
have a process, then at the end of each day, you evaluate how well you traded against the process you've defined, and then you could make maybe some potential tweaks from there, right? But thinking that there's some sort of time frame on which I need to be successful, I think it's gonna lead to bad habits. It's gonna cause you to make decisions that you'll regret, and it's not going to be aligned with anything that you can repeat. And I think what we want to work on is finding ways that we can repeat what we do on the market in a consistent way. So Tenio's is encouraging us to look at the urgency trade here.
Look at the urgency trade. So the urgency trade in gold, I think we saw.
Is not so
Uh,
urgent.
not so urgent, not so urgent, right? Here's what I'm defining, and it may be urgent on your charts if you look at a shorter time frame. But what I'm looking at is the 30-minute range here, and if we attach VWAP to it, VWAP is still very much in this range, right, where price is kind of leaving, but VWAP is not, right? And I consider this kind of empty price action. If we look at
Yeah.
a shorter time frame chart, maybe on a 3-minute chart, right, where we have a smaller range, maybe this is one that you take, but because this is this overnight session, I'm gonna defer to the 30-minute range because there's gonna be more volume in this. But it's looking good if you're already in it, right? If you're already in the long, same thing with the NASDAQ, right? If we look at the NASDAQ on the 30-minute, price is hanging out at the highs of this range, but volume is still in the middle of it. I would not be surprised in this case at a retest of this VWAP. But again, if I look at a 3-minute chart, on the 3-minute, we do get that urgency, right? Where VWAP has left that 3-minute opening range. So it depends on what time frame you're looking at, right? For the New York session, I'm going to use a 3-minute shorter time frame opening range. But for the overnight session, I'm going to use 30 minutes, and it's not setting up on a 30-minute.
Yeah, I would say that we're still in that same initial balance range that we
Yep.
established on the 30-minute chart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Not
And
much to
so
do
as
there.
long as we stay in that range, really we're in kind of range price action, right?
I was.
So why would I put in a trade? Why would I put in a trade that's trending in an environment where we're range?
Yeah, I was just going to say this. This is almost, and I'm not going to take this trade. This is almost a better short here
Yeah.
than it is a long, right? If I'm looking at the criteria for a long, criteria for a short, this is a better scalp short than a long, in my opinion, right? But everyone
Yeah,
is
and I
going to look
have
at
a
the
reference
fundamental
level also on my 233-day EMA,
right
right?
above us, right?
Right above us, right? So you could say, hey, I could take a short, use the 233-day, as my reference, and as
Right.
long as price stays below it, then I stay in the trade, right?
Yep.
This is the orange line. Let me go ahead and expand this so I'm looking at multiple markets here. But yeah, see, price came up to the edge here, right? And we have not made a new high. If anything, we're starting to develop a bearish engulfing pattern, right?
Yep.
So this is indicating to me, if anything, we're looking to go lower, not
Yeah.
higher.
Yeah, same here. I'm looking at the 30-minute chart, all of these wicks on the tops of this 30-minute candle, 30-minute candles. Yeah, not really setting up for a long there, but if you see one again, trade your trades, manage your risk. Uh, can you show your settings for anchored VWAP and how you use it? Here, I'll go here. The only thing I changed as far as the settings go outside of the color is the source. I changed this to open, high, low, close divided by 4. And that was on a suggestion from Brian Shannon. If you read the book on anchored VWAP, he uses open, high, low, close divided by 4. Everything else is the same. And the way I'm using it, and I think the way Coach Ray is using it is, first thing I'm going to do is always attach to the beginning of a session. So we have the Globex open, which is at 5 p.m. Central Time. I'm going to attach it to the New York session, which is 8:30 a.m. Central Time, and then any kind of high volume event that I see, right? So something like this candle here, right? Where if you look at all the other candles around this volume candle, and this is why I use volume. And Coach, I want to ask you a little bit about volume profile when we get a chance.
Sure, sure.
But I have this candle here, and it sticks out, right? So I'd anchor a view up to that and identify the range of that candle. And what I'm looking for is volume, which is this red line, to leave the range, and that's giving me a trade in either direction. How do you use it, Coach?
Yeah, so volume is again kind of like this initial balance range, right? So if you kind of maybe come back to my charts here a little bit, so we have here, this is kind of our value area, right? So I'm kind of drawing in my value area from Friday. So I'm always looking, where is price in relation to value from the last session, right? So I'm using on TopstepX, we have this fixed range volume profile.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically draw the range from the start of the session to the close of the New York session. Okay. And
Okay.
that establishes my value range. Now, generally, what I do is I really don't care whether I have buys or sell in this value area range. I know that this is where 70% of price has been traded. Okay. So generally, what I like to do with this is I like to color this in as just one solid color. I don't really care whether it's yellow or how many buys and sells happen in this area, because as far as I'm concerned, this is an area of balance. This whole area is an area of balance,
Makes
right?
sense.
Right. And I'm not going to be super aggressive in trading inside this area, right? I might use this area as targets if price manages to come back inside value. There's that value area acceptance trade that if you read Mind Over Markets, that would be something that I would entertain. But right now I would probably want to kind of see if I can find this here. All right, so I would basically color this area both as yellow, right? I really don't care what this range is, buy and sell,
Mm,
right?
okay.
All I know that this is the value area. This is where 70% of price is traded. So right now, the sentiment is bullish because I'm above value, right? But that could rapidly change, right? If price manages to get inside value, right? If it manages to close below the up. So I use the volume profile to really arrive at market sentiment, right? And the volume profile provides me these levels like value area high, right? Value area, I'm just going to abbreviate it as VAH, right? I have the point of control, okay, which is the price in which generated the most volume for that session, okay? And then we have value area low, okay, which is on the side of value. So I use these as reference levels, just like we use EMA, right? I have value area high, value area low. So that's kind of how I use the volume profile. It provides me price reference levels, and it gives me a view on market sentiment.
When you're anchoring your profiles, do you always use just the prior day? Do you ever
I always
go?
use the prior day. I know there's a camp of people that use dynamic, right,
Yeah,
during the day,
right, right.
right? I generally use I don't use the developing volume profile. I'm
Okay.
using the volume profile. I guess you can consider it more like a session
Yeah.
session volume
Yep.
profile.
Makes
Okay,
sense. And
that's
then
that's kind of what I'm using. And then I use these levels just like I use any other levels that we identify and we talked about on the weekly and the daily,
right.
right?
Do you ever let's say we're coming down to an area, for example, I'm going to go back to my charts real quick, but before we got this sell off in the equity markets, do you ever, let's say we see our charts this way,
Yeah.
are you ever using, I'll do a, anchored volume profile this way. Are you ever looking at, volume profile from days prior when we're coming down to these levels?
Yeah, I don't. I generally, since I'm a day trader,
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily, so I'm generally looking just to the prior day.
got
Now,
you.
now, could a value area high from a few days ago serve as an area of reference? Yes,
Mhm. Okay.
right. But I don't look at it as much. My focus is 100% on what happens. Where is price in relation to the last session?
Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Thank you, coach.
Sure.
Let's see. We got about 5 minutes left. If you guys have any other questions, let us know. Coach Ray, talk to me a little bit about what it is that you do in Discord. I know I've joined that session a couple of times, but just
Yeah.
for anyone who is here who hasn't joined, what can
Yeah.
they expect if they're joining your Discord class?
Yeah, so I mean, the idea, I guess it's really kind of, it's a market review session,
Okay.
right? Where I share with them the trades that I've taken in the market and maybe well, basically the reasons for them, right? It's kind of a way for them to maybe put some pieces together, see, kind of look over my shoulder to some degree on trades that I've taken during this session, and provide them reasons. Like, it's for me, it serves as kind of my daily journal, right?
Okay.
And I review my trades for the day, but
Right.
I'm making that public to everyone,
Makes
right?
sense.
So I'm
Makes a
going
lot of
through
sense.
critiquing my trades, what I like, what I dislike, whether they were profitable or not. We read both, and so it's not necessarily winning trades that I present. There are
You have to
situations
show
where I
both
present
sides.
losing trades, and I kind of confess as to why and why they were. And in some cases, trades just don't work out. We don't
Right.
that happens as well. So
Okay, awesome. So that session Monday through Thursday at
Yeah,
6
Monday
p.m.
through
Central Time, right?
Thursdays, yeah, 6 p.m. Central Time for an hour. And then, like I said, as people present, maybe some challenges that they face, we'll cover those too. But it's mainly a market review, market trade kind of session. It's not actively looking for live trades, but more kind of my end of day review of how the day went,
Right.
and share with folks, some of the things that I may have entertained or taken and the results of those.
Awesome. Well, if you haven't joined already, Roger Sanchez just said it in the chat. If you haven't been to his coaching, you should definitely stop by. Lots of valuable information and learning material, and I
Thank you, Roger.
definitely agree with that. We got a couple minutes here, Coach. Any final words before we go into the week? I'm gonna check my notes just to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, I'm not really seeing anything, week wise. Again, like I said, I was kind of thinking that maybe we would be entering some sort of demand zone here in the gold. We got a little bit of initial rally, but really not the follow through that I would have expected. It almost seems like it wants to stay in this range. If anything, it might even create a little bit of a situation here where we get a little bit of a value area acceptance trade. See that price is kind of challenging the daily VWAP, right? If we do manage to get below that, more importantly, if we get maybe price close back inside value, right, we could see a full rotation of value all the way down to 25.66, which would make for a pretty nice trade.
25.66. Awesome. I am going to drop a link in the chat. This is all I have as far as my notes go. Drop a link in the chat. We just talked about Coach Ray in Discord. If you're not in Discord already, make sure you join that. I think we have 96,000 members in Discord.
Wow.
I wonder how many of those are bots, or clone Coach Rays, because there's a couple of those in there. But
Yeah, no, there's a
our
few of those. There's a
our
few of
admin
those. Yes,
team does a pretty
there's a
good
few of
job of
those.
weeding them out of there. But if you're not in Discord already, make sure you join that. Hit that like button, like Rufus King just said. And if you like what we're doing here, and not just Coach Ray and I on this session, just Topstep in general, leave a review on Trustpilot. If you want to talk directly to MP, he reads every single one of those Trustpilot reviews. So if you have something to say to
Mhm.
him, say it there. But that is for Topstep as a whole, right? What we're doing as a company, the education that we provide, the program that we provide, from Combine to XFA to live account, the support team, any kind of reviews you want to leave for Topstep, leave them there. Six says I had a fake Dakota. Yeah, there's a bunch of fakes in there. Don't ever pay anyone. Coach Ray,
Yeah,
myself
absolutely, guys.
are never going to ask you to, hey, let me trade your account. And
No,
why would I do that?
right.
Doesn't make sense. So use your common sense when you're in Discord. It is a great community, a ton of traders in there. You can find a trading buddy, but always watch your back. I got nothing else. Coach, thank you for joining.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for joining here. Trade well, manage your risk this week. Again, you don't have to be in a rush to make a bunch of profits. Be in a rush to follow your process, and the results are going to follow that process. And when you're ready to hit the gas, do that. Remember, Dakota has slow markets coming up at 7:30 Central Time tonight, and then Deeyana with the London Open at 3:30 Central, and then of course we have the daytime show starting at 8 a.m. Central Time. Go enjoy the rest of your Sundays. Hopefully you all had a great session. We will talk to you all tomorrow. Thanks again, Coach.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye.